welcome to Between Sundays. I'm Tyler, and I once thought these things were valuable, but now I consider them all worthless. Today we're counting it all garbage to become one with Christ. But before we diaco, now that they've patterned their lives after mine, let's welcome in my joy and my crown.
Oh.
Marin and Barry. Good day, guys.
Which one, good day, which one of us is the joy and which one of us is the crown?
You'll never know.
I think it's pretty easy to guess. Not one mention of Scubalon in your intro?
He said garbage.
He didn't say Scubalon.
I couldn't have like two words in there. I had diaco. I had to make a choice.
You got to pick your Greek.
Garbage.
Nice.
To make a choice.
Is that new?
No, that's old. That's why I said I did.
you say that all the time.
I had it before. Barry was like, "Did you get any sound bites?" I was like, "No, I already had one."
Garbage. That's good.
Oh, guys, what's going on? What's new?
What's new? I woke up this morning and I did not want to get out of bed. I was so tired.
Is that because you're 42 now?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I'm
Yes.
42. I'm old and decrepit now. But no,
Birthday
it's
boy.
because I was at Grace for like 11 hours straight on my feet.
Just for fun.
Just for
And
fun,
you're 42.
preaching, and I'm 42. Yeah. Also, guess who else is 42 today? Hey, what time,
Today?
Tyler, what time were you born during the day?
I don't know, but it is my birthday today.
It is your birthday.
You don't know what time you were born?
I didn't have a watch on when I came out.
You don't have like tender talks with your mother?
I bet she doesn't know.
I bet
Maybe she does.
does.
bet
I'll
she
ask her.
does.
It's her birthday today too.
It is. Happy
So-
birthday, Patty.
I'm sure. Yeah, she probably does remember because she told me on my first birthday she was not happy that I like stole her birthday.
That's right, because you're born on her birthday, right?
Yeah, so it's her birthday too. But she says today I got a text that I am her greatest gift.
Oh,
Wow.
precious.
Greatest
Share
birthday
that-
gift.
Did you share that
Greatest
with her?
birthday gift.
got
Not
it.
greatest gift. Greatest birthday
gift.
That's way better. I was like, wow, did you share that with your other siblings?
Yeah,
You, Tyler, are my greatest.
gift. There was one time where, when I was growing up, I was getting in trouble for something, and she came in. I have two younger sisters, and she came in, and I don't know, we were arguing about something, and by the time you know how every argument has like a arc? It's like
Yeah.
you go up, and then once you
Yeah,
find
the dramatic
a
pinnacle.
point,
Yeah.
and then you're kind of going down, and it's reconciliation time, and we were in the reconciliation moment. And she said, I'll never forget it because I thought in the moment, man, my sisters are going to hate this. Because she's like, now, parents don't have favorites, but there's just something about a firstborn son.
Wow.
And I was like,
She's not
noted.
wrong.
Noted.
She's not wrong.
Noted. So I hang that over my
something.
sister's head the rest of their lives.
Just something about him.
Just something about it. Is it time for gifts? Speaking of greatest gifts.
What?
Gifts.
You know I was going to bring a gift.
No, stop.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, she's pulling out actual gifts. She has,
navigate the
Eager to navigate the fun.
says happy
You've gotta
birthday
have
on
two
the bag.
gifts.
I'm trying to help our audio friends of the
for
pod.
those who are not watching, Marin's handing out two
They're
gifts.
heavy.
Are these going to be appropriate?
Yeah, they're show appropriate. Yeah.
Should we open
Safe-
these in
same
the
time?
privacy?
Safe for work. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Same time.
Oh. Okay, we're opening it up.
ASMR.
It is. Whoa!
You should be well familiar.
Black salsa.
Labor of love.
All right. So for my 42nd birthday, Marin has, and Barry's 42nd birthday, Marin has given us her famous or infamous black salsa.
That's really great, but not famously the recipe.
Yeah. So Marin, tell the listeners how this came about. Like, how did you?
How did I
How
come?
do you make it?
I'm afraid I can't let them know that.
Yeah, it's the smoked jalapenos that make it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're
this is
very,
really
very
nice.
welcome.
of you. Thank
Some
you.
of the best salsa.
They're so good.
And Marin has made it for many years, since before you got here. Like, this is a
No.
Chicago thing.
So it's a Chicago thing. It's a Chicago favorite. Our favorite restaurant, our favorite Mexican restaurant in Chicago had this black salsa that no one could crack the code. It's a total mystery.
So everybody wants to know, but nobody's spilling.
Well, it just so happens one of my dear, dear friends married into the family that owns the restaurant. And it still took me years, even though I kind of, I set her up with her husband. They have 3 beautiful children that would never have seen the light of day if it weren't for my hand of matchmaking.
You said, I want one thing in return.
That's what it took to get this recipe. So there's no way I'm giving it out.
The running joke with the lead team, every year we have our lead team retreats, and Marin will make this salsa for us. And the running joke is we always try to catch her in talking about
I already know what it is.
What?
You've never known what it is.
It's charred. You have to char
Tomatoes?
probably.
Yeah.
But also what are those one peppers? Those yellow ones.
Okay.
Yellow peppers?
Yeah. This is how it goes.
The yellow ones.
This is how it
I'm
goes.
going to find it right now.
He always
He keeps thinking that Marin's going to be like, well, no, that's not it. And then we'll be able to rule something out. But
You know who will tell me?
She's
Jed.
Chat
AI?
GPT.
Jed will break.
Oh, Jed. Jed GPT. Gotta ask him.
Well, happy birthday to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
I'm very excited to have this tonight. I will eat it.
Hatch.
Oh yeah.
Hatch
chilies.
Yeah,
You should
that's
try
what-
that.
Yeah, you got to char those.
There's got to be a way to find out. Reverse engineer.
There you go. Do it. See if you can get close.
I can't. I don't even know how to describe a single. I could like eat anything and the flavor is like, I don't know. It's sweet.
Do you
like,
roast
I don't
your
know how
peppers
to.
on the grill or indoors?
I'm telling you nothing. You will get nothing.
or
from
probably you
me.
broil them. You probably broil them in your oven.
Probably.
Yeah, you do.
I probably
You
do.
I can tell.
This is it. This
Yeah.
is it, friends.
You probably, yeah, you definitely broil your tomatoes because that's when they become the juiciest.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Probably want them to get just a little smoky, right, Marin? Or is it right before it smokes or after they start smoking?
You know what you
Take
just
the
did?
challenge.
You know what you just did? You've unleashed the friends of the pod.
Oh, yeah.
So now it's not just going to be me, Barry, and Marcus wondering what this is.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Marcus because I was about to bring this to you guys, knowing I would give it
Marcus
to you.
got to have his.
And if he didn't, his birthday was recently.
Of course, yeah.
It should be known that Jed just delivered him his identical jar to you guys. Just went to Marcus because I can't give you salsa and not give it to Marcus.
You probably dry your peppers, so you probably soak them in hot water to soften the skins a little bit, and then you
What-
can roast them
What a fine idea.
as above.
Fine idea. You like to make stuff and you like to make stuff. So just give it a try.
Yeah.
See what you could do.
You know what? I have a couple weeks off coming up.
Yeah.
And I think I might take some more of that corn that I grew last year and make some nixtamalized corn
let's
and make some like
go.
tortillas and pay you back.
Oh, Barry,
Reciprocity.
yes.
All right. So we'll do that. And then you can tell me one ingredient from this recipe. I'll earn it one ingredient at a time.
So I take the boys to school every day, and I asked Milo today, what should we do for my birthday? He said we should go to the arcade.
Ooh.
Oh.
He does know that you love to play games.
Yeah. And then I said, well, that seems like something we'd do for your birthday. What should we do what do I enjoy? Like, what should we do? And then he said, maybe you should take a nap. Like, of all the things that I enjoy, apparently he thinks,
Yeah.
Is he wrong?
I do like to take naps. Yeah. So maybe we
Okay.
should all take a nap.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
42.
We went from
Family
arcade
nap.
to family nap.
Hey,
Family nap.
it's like, well, if you don't want to do my idea, then I don't know, take a nap or something.
Yeah, he was like, maybe we should go to the movies. So that's a good idea. Yeah, what should we see? What would I like to see? And he said, Dogman.
What is that?
I don't
So
know
you
what
guys
that
can
is.
have little kids.
To know Dog Man?
Yeah, let's
That's a
have Dog
King's
Man.
X album.
I don't.
Yeah, that's what he wanted.
And a good
that's what he
one
wanted to
at
listen to. So other than birthdays,
Yeah.
what's going on? What's new?
Well, like I
Spring
said,
has sprung.
spring has sprung.
You don't have any updates?
Well, okay. This year, I'm taking a step back. I'm kind of going. It's not been 7 years on the farm, but I'm giving my
Jubilee.
It's a little bit of a Sabbath rest for the land when it comes
Intentional?
to annuals. Yes, because last year I got so overwhelmed by doing too much that I ended up kind of burning out a little bit, and it like my garden became more of a burden than a joy. And so as a result, my food forest, my permaculture, like all the perennials and stuff that I talked about early on when I first started, planting all these plants, has gone a little bit to seed. It's gone a little it's gotten overgrown. It's a little jungly. So this year, instead
that's what the whole point was.
well, no, you don't want like weeds. You don't want like Canada thistle taking over. You want like beneficial plants. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is not do annuals at all this year, except for like some greens for the rabbits. Like I'm not going to do any annuals. Instead, I'm going to focus all my attention on the food forest and get that tip top shape, new mulch, new plants. And to start that off, I actually got some rhubarb from Jim Swanson. He brought me 2 big rhubarb plants from his garden. And
Don't
so
act like you're a big shot.
I'm a pretty big shot now that I've got Swanson rhubarb.
Yeah.
And so Jim, I don't know if you're a friend of the pod, but thank you for your rhubarb. So in about a year and 3 months or 4, we can have some rhubarb pie thanks to Jim Swanson.
Nice.
Do you think you've lost like momentum because it takes a year and 3 months to get what you are so excited about now?
Well, no, the weird thing is like, because I was so overwhelmed last year, my food forest went completely haywire with all these weeds, and except all the plants were starting to finally put on fruit. And so I was like super stressed out and wasn't in there as much as I should have been, because there was a bunch of stuff. Like I had pears last year that were amazing. And like, so this year I'm going to fully enjoy the fruit literally of all my labor and get things back. And we're going to have tons of asparagus. I'll bring you guys asparagus.
Yes,
so
please.
Lots of stuff like that.
I don't need the asparagus.
You won't
I
get
grilled asparagus this weekend.
for the
So
black
good.
salsa recipe.
I think asparagus.
It's the number one
That's a
ingredient in your
surprise.
salsa.
I don't know why people like asparagus.
It's
Are
so
you
good.
kidding?
Like it's not like
Get
bad.
out.
It's not bad.
Get out.
It's just zero. It's like
No,
it's
you've
like
never-
chewy water.
Oh, stop.
If it's not done right, if it's
Yeah.
like
Like
roasted right, and
if
they're
I
like,
go to
"Oh,
a restaurant and they're like, your sides are mashed potatoes and asparagus, I'm like, all right, well, basically mashed potatoes. Because
Well, first of all, you should have both of those things on the plate. I don't know why it would be an either or. I don't know what kind of restaurants you go to.
no, I'm saying here, this is
it's
what it
both."
comes with.
And you're like,
it
can I
comes
sub,
with
can I
you don't
sub
choose.
fries for this?
Yeah, I'm like,
Just do
asparagus.
double taters.
I don't want to like because the asparagus is always just like wet and
Yeah, I will
it's
say-
like chewy. It's zero. It's just
I will say, Tyler, I agree with you when the asparagus is prepared in a nasty way. Like if it's like that, like wet lemony
wet-
asparagus, that's
wet
disgusting.
asparagus.
I hate wet lemony asparagus when it's limp. You want like you
nobody
want it
likes
to be
that.
like a little crispy, a little charred. Yeah.
Well, maybe
and
I've never had
especially
that.
a little grilled.
grilled is nice.
asparagus.
Yeah.
I guess I've never had it because any asparagus that I get at a restaurant just seems like it's like flimsy and it.
Do you pick it up
doesn't-
and do you you just
I
wiggle
just
it in
shake
the air like that? Like
get the water off
the
of
pencil
it.
trick?
Oh yeah, the pencil trick. No, it's just it just doesn't have any.
Yeah.
It's like, why would I eat this?
Well, I won't bring you any of my asparagus,
And
but you can
I
have
will.
some.
I will, because I'm always out to prove you wrong. Like I feel like you think you know something about life, and then I know something different about life, and I have to show you
I'm
my
not
way,
saying I know. I am saying my opinion, which is
which is wrong.
Do you like
Usually
Brussels
right.
sprouts?
yeah.
Okay. That at least, because that's one of those things I grew up nauseated by them. I thought they were the most disgusting thing ever. And now, like, they're my favorite. I love
Delicious.
them.
Can't get enough.
Week 2
Between
of a
Sundays
whole new
headquarters.
setup. You guys are no longer sitting right next to each other.
No, we're
This is
across from each other.
Much
across
more
from each other so
comfortable
you
to
can
have
see
a
each other.
conversation
Yeah, I
this way.
agree.
This
Yeah.
is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you,
A lot
Mary?
of
What's
work's been
new?
going on.
What's new?
What's new with me? Well, the weather was gorgeous this weekend, which meant it was time to return to smoking meats.
Oh, what'd you
The
make?
smoker, the same as last year.
okay.
The sandwich meat, just yeah.
Tried
But
and true.
We're back. We're back to
we are
living
back.
outdoors.
Yeah.
I got myself. I wanted to do this all of last year during sabbatical, and was too cheap to do it. I wanted like one of those zero gravity chairs, like a recliner, because I imagined myself doing all this reading outdoors over
Yes.
sabbatical. But again, I'm too cheap, and everywhere I looked, even on Amazon, they were somewhere between like $70 and $100 or something like that. And just, I can't be spending that on a chair.
Yeah.
And so I told myself I would find it in a thrift store, which I never did. And then the weather was maddeningly gorgeous on, was it Friday or Saturday?
Both.
Both? Was it both? I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to 3 different thrift stores trying to find this chair on the cheap. Didn't find it. Went to 2 different hardware stores. Finally found it for like roughly $50 or something. I'm like, all right, deal, let's go. Okay. So I got myself an outdoor reading chair, and I spent all of Saturday until it started raining. I mean, all the way up until it started raining, just reading and drinking coffee in my chair.
Look at you.
Greatest day.
I know the layout of your house. Where do you put this?
It's on the front porch.
Oh, it's on the front
porch.
The front. So when there's two streets that line your front porch.
Yeah, lots
so
of
everybody who drives into your in or out of your
under
neighborhood,
a blanket on my chair.
Don't you want some privacy? Like, what if you fell asleep with your mouth open out there?
It's the only place that has shade. I have no shade in my yard, as you well know.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, it's you got to trade one for the other.
I guess,
I can have privacy and then be in like the beating sun, or I could have a little bit of an awning and read and
an audience.
Yeah, an audience.
Okay,
guys, I'm trying to tell you it was great, and now you're telling me what was not great about it.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's a better spot.
There may be a better spot. Yeah. One of these days, someday, some distant day, Jed and I have been talking about wanting a patio.
Oh, yeah,
like
patio.
An actual. You
or
guys,
deck.
you have the sweetest setup ever. I feel like
we've got a nice patio.
Your patio has a huge awning. You have so much space to just hang out, whether it's raining or not. Like, yeah.
We have a nice patio. I have 2 grills on it.
Yeah.
Can fit 2 grills.
Are you going to use them this year?
Maybe, but you know what you should use yours for now that you're smoking again? March Madness starts this week. So you need to smoke some chicken wings.
Oh, okay. I usually get mine from Ale Emporium, but I suppose I can start making them at home.
You gotta smoke some chicken wings on there.
All right.
Eager to navigate the fun
all year long.
All right, guys, back to back. You know what? I've gotten a lot of comments this past weekend. Thank you for everybody listening to the pod. They just love the pod. People love the pod recently. Like, this has been a great 6-week stretch of pod partnering with the sermon series and all that stuff. So I'm not going to apologize for 17 minutes of talking about recipes
somebody
and
just
salsa.
told me this week in the green room, actually, Sunday morning, that their favorite part of the pod
I've heard that.
This nonsense.
Yeah. So
they love this nonsense.
I was about to say back-to-back weeks of going over my estimated time. I usually try to do like 12 minutes, but we just hit the 18-minute mark.
Oh my
so
goodness,
much
that's too much.
But
salsa.
Before we move on, can you move your salsa from the edge of the table, because both of you are just making me so nervous.
Here, I'm going to put it. Can the camera see this?
Close to crashing to the ground as possible. After all that work.
There we go.
Right there.
Thank you. I can rest now.
I'm going to ask Marcus what size container he got.
Identical.
All right, Barry, you just crossed a major milestone.
I did 6 in a row.
6 weeks in a row
it's
of
so funny.
sermons.
Pastors do this all the time. It's just at Grace that's not normal. But for me, this was a record. 6 in a row. I've never done that before.
Congratulations.
And I'll beat it this next weekend. So
yeah.
Man, you're just
churning them out.
Running your own race.
Exactly.
Yeah. So week 6 of the Reimagine series.
Yeah.
What was the big idea, and what did you want people to walk away with?
Well, as with the last couple of weeks, this is kind of yet another angle where Paul is describing his heart for what he wants the Philippians to do, which is to live kind of completely dedicated to Christ, to being representatives of Christ, or portals or lenses we talked about last week, citizens of heaven. This is the passage where he actually says that full phrase, citizens of heaven. And so really that's what he's talking about. He's talking about his own perspective on things, the stuff that I used to think was so important. Now it's all just garbage. It's street rubbish compared to knowing Christ, becoming like him. And then he goes into this metaphor of running a race, and he's like, look, I'm pressing on. I've got one goal, one aim. I'm running flat out for this one thing, and that is to know Christ, to become one with him. And then he says, and I want y'all to pattern your lives after mine. Run this race with me, run to win. And so that was basically kind of the big idea. And we can get into some of the specifics about whether or not Paul was mixing metaphors when he brings in all this stuff about running races, but that's basically what he was trying to get across. And so I tied it in a little bit to my own story of being a pastor, and just my own experience, my own insecurities and all that stuff, kind of bringing it into what Paul ultimately says, which is, look, at the end of the day, my crown, my victory is you, the Philippian church. Like when I see who you're becoming, that helps me realize I'm not running this race in vain. And I feel the same way personally when I look at Grace and I see what Grace Church is becoming. And so I kind of brought it all in and tied it in that way.
Yeah, you were a little more
All over the place.
vulnerable and personal than you usually are.
Yeah, I was a little...
What led you to go that route? Because you're not, I mean, you share stories of your life from time to time, but like you said, you shared how you've felt insecure and whether you have imposter syndrome and things like that. So what led you to go that route?
I don't know. I had a moment last week where on Commitment Sunday, we talked about this on the podcast, but just the unbelievable, how just overwhelming it was to see all of Grace Church just kind of coming forward, being together, unified, and all the hugs and the handshakes. And for me, it was like a recognition of like, like I'm your pastor. Like I love this church, and I don't feel like an imposter right now. I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And so I think that started me thinking. And then as I thought about this idea of like, you are my joy and my crown, I thought about Paul just like almost wistfully just loving the Philippian church from afar. I just felt connected to him in that sense. And like, I think I get it. Like, I think I get a bit of what he's feeling in his just how much he just loves and how proud he is of this church and the joy that it brings him, even though like his life is filled with hardships. And I mean, when he was in Philippi, he's thrown in jail and beaten within an inch of his life. And like, it wasn't like he had a great time in Philippi. It was hard, but he gets to see the fruit of it. And so I connected with that. And for some reason, even just kind of thinking through the flow of this series and just the idea of us being a family and the next generation, I just thought, let's reflect on that a little bit. So
you primarily focused on Philippians 3, correct? And as we've said this whole time, Paul is writing from prison. Yeah. And part of what you preached was that he like briefly mentions the things that basically he used to consider valuable.
Right.
But that now he considers garbage.
Right.
You didn't really cover it, but in 5 and 6 of chapter 3, verse 5 and 6 of chapter 3, he kind of goes through a list of the things he used to value. It's like, he was circumcised, he's a tribe of Benjamin, member of the Pharisees, he's a zealot, he was persecuting the church, he obeyed the law without fault. Like, these are all things that he used to value.
Sure.
And they were a huge part of his identity. And now those things he considers to be, what was the word? Scubalon. Garbage. Or wait, it was sewage.
Poop. I mean, that's what it is. It was, yeah, it's
by the way,
but your slide said dung.
I know. I went with the more
producer Kayla is going to start pulling sound clips from the podcast.
Oh no.
Not just sermons anymore.
So there's a good one.
There's a good one.
Doomed.
Yeah, it like, so just to kind of set the scene on that, like there were all cities, the sewage had to go somewhere and it would flow downhill. So there would be gutters on the side of streets and things like that. But like they didn't have internal plumbing. Did it
just smell terrible? Everyone just smelled terrible?
Yes. Rome, for example, was like famously, it had a stench that you could smell like miles away as you were getting close to the city. Yeah, it was a horrible, horrible thing. And I mean, just imagine having a word for the stuff that runs through the gutters.
They don't put that in the like TV show.
No, you just, where you literally have to like cover your mouth with a cloth when you're walking into the city.
Oh my goodness.
That was what people lived in. And everybody would have been well aware of these gutters where just the filth just flows down the street.
So Paul's saying his entire prior identity is that. It is
all the things he used to think were so important that he gave
prior
himself
achievements.
to.
Prior achievements.
Yeah, being like this incredibly like talented Pharisee, being, a perfectly, perfect Jewish stock, and he like takes pride in his tribe and all that stuff all of that stuff that was a part of his identity. Yeah, he's like, no, that's just gutter filth.
What do you think some things today we would consider like we overvalue them or are distractions that would be garbage compared to truly knowing Christ?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Every material gain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just name one.
Yeah.
Compared to knowing Christ.
Right.
I mean, that's
Well,
pretty-
yeah. It's what are the things that we pat ourselves on the back for?
Right.
My paycheck, my car, my house, my stuff, my
education,
career, my education,
title.
and any of that. Yeah, that's one big thing. My talents, my what are the things that we think are like the best about ourselves? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and he talks about his zealousness.
Yeah.
That's in that list of things I now consider rubbish or dung or trash or whatever. And yet he is zealous for Christ. And so it's this character quality that he had. He didn't abandon it. It just got rerouted. It got repurposed and channeled in the right direction.
Right.
So, the education, the things, it's not that we abandon those things or they're no longer a part of who we are, but we find a way for them to be utilized in the kingdom, used for Christ.
Right.
He did.
Yeah. I've heard stories in the past of people who, I don't know, maybe they came from the corporate world and they were all about the next big raise or the next big promotion, and they're all about the car and they want to look good and the clothes and all that stuff. But then they have this transformative experience with Christ and they end up giving themselves to, I don't know, full-time ministry, like homeless ministry or something like that. And suddenly they're like, yeah, I used to be all about this and now I'm all about this. And I realize this is way better. That's the same kind of vibe, I think.
Lauren and I went out the other night for her birthday dinner. And I don't remember why I started talking about this, but I basically started saying I don't want to be surrounded by people who it basically, like, after I shared what I shared last week on the podcast about Milo asking questions about God.
Yeah.
A number of people have reached out to me, but I basically said I want to start surrounding ourselves with people who only they want more from Jesus. Because there's enough people that we hang out with, or not hang out with, but are in our day-to-day lives where it's we're fine. They're fine, but they're not challenging me. They're not encouraging me. They're just kind of, they're fine, but I want to be surrounded by people who want to be around Jesus.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like that's what Paul's saying. It's if this isn't your identity, or this was my identity, I wanted all these other things, but that's all garbage.
Right.
And after I shared what I shared last week on the podcast about Milo, I responded to somebody who sent me a text asking what they can pray for me for. And I shared all the good and bad things that I need prayer and encouragement for. As a dad who's now in a position to answer questions about God.
the Holy Trinity.
Yeah. And that's just one example of things I need prayer for, but that was one of them. And I told Lauren I want to be surrounded by people who know and love Jesus and only want to pursue him, because those are the people that are going to help me represent Christ to my children.
Right.
For example. And this series has done a number on me to really reflect on whether I'm patterning my life after Paul's in that sense. Would I consider all of the other things that I consume or my mind is consumed by? Do I really consider those things garbage? Because compared to being able to faithfully represent him, I don't know, in 30 years, Milo's going to be none of that stuff mattered.
Right.
Compared to you representing
Yeah.
Jesus to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you are kind of who we're describing. You were in the secular workaday world, working towards a certain thing, wanting a certain thing, and you gave that all up to be in ministry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back once.
Yeah. Right.
All right, Barry, here's your moment. Roman Imperial Cult.
I was
You
hoping
brought
you'd
it
ask.
in. You brought it into a sermon. Roman Imperial Cult. It's time to just go unbridled.
All right. I won't.
You've been.
If you could see the smile on his face right now, those of you who are just listening.
Yeah, you have been diving deep into the Roman imperial cult for at least a year. I don't know, probably more.
Yeah.
You snuck it into a sermon.
Yeah.
At least
He
explicitly.
didn't sneak it in.
Yeah. He's like, there's this thing called the Roman imperial
Like,
cult.
I'm just gonna rammed it right in there.
So tell us about it.
All right.
What is it? Why do we need to talk about it?
So just some context for why this matters to me and why I'm smiling right now. So a year ago ish, well, actually, when I first went to Ephesus, which was 2 years ago or something like that, year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I had this like mind blowing experience of just how much there was to learn about the world in which the New Testament was born, like the world of the early church, the world of Paul, the world of the New Testament, like all of that. It just was the beginning of this, like, it was like someone opened a door and I thought I was in the library, but I was only in like the waiting room. And I opened the door and I was like, oh, there's the library of knowledge. And so I started reading, I started studying. I came across a scholar, Stephen Friesen, who has written some pretty seminal work on
Friend of the pod.
I hope so. That'd be amazing. Who has done some incredible work on specifically the Roman imperial cult in Asia Minor, the province of Asia, and then specifically how that impacts the church and things like the writing of the book of Revelation. And his work just launched me, and I've been reading, I seriously, tons and tons of stuff. And the reason why it's so fascinating to me is because I am now realizing that the interaction of the church with the Roman Empire, with the powers of this world, and specifically with this idea of the emperor being worshipped as a god, is actually all over the place in the New Testament. And not only that, it also, it actually has some significant warnings and encouragements to us today when it comes to the church and what we're facing. And so I'm like, I can't stop myself. I'm like learning, and I'm like hungry for more knowledge. Like I'm like, okay, now then I need to learn this, and then I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to read this. And because I'm just like, oh, it's all clicking for me. And
so it influenced every writer of the New Testament. Like you can see the influence of it in their writing.
And I would argue, and this is not your question, we'd go on to this another time, but I would argue that the different writers of the New Testament all approach it slightly differently. They have different angles on how the church should respond, where, for example, you read, I won't get into it. I said I wouldn't, but like the author of Revelation, John, is like, resist, like we fight back, we resist, and we fight back the way Christ fights back with self-giving love. It's all very upside down, but he's like, we will not submit to this cult. Whereas other books are kind of like, hey, keep your head down and focus on Christ, but don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. It's a very different,
live as good neighbors in this world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so anyway, so it's really fascinating. It's like a whole new angle on the New Testament that I've just begun to understand. Rebels, like Star Wars Rebels?
Yeah, it's like the Resistance.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. And to what degree is the church supposed to be fighting against versus
subversive?
Are we just going along with, or are we like living? Yeah. Are we letting it kind of just be a part of our world? It's all in there. So anyway.
So when these guys were writing these books, did the Roman imperial cult see these things and be like, hey, they're talking about us. Let's get it.
Yes. And one of the main things that caused so much persecution and hatred and problems within the early church was the fact that the Christians were not consistently bowing the knee. They were not willing to worship the emperor as divine. That was like a drawing, like a line in the sand for them, where they'd say, look, we will. And they did. They would make sacrifices, or not sacrifices, but they would pray for the well-being of the emperor, but they would draw the line and say, but I'm not worshiping him. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't do that. I worship the one true God. And so, but when you look at the letters of Paul, you see that he has less of an aggressive approach like Revelation, but he's got a very subversive approach where he is constantly using language of this Roman imperial cult, like Caesar is Lord. And Paul's constantly saying, Christ is Lord. Like he's taking the same phrase and he's flipping it around.
Is that why he was in jail?
Yes. for some of it. Also because he was routinely getting under the skin of the local Jewish leaders, and the Romans had a decent sort of equilibrium with the Jewish communities. They let them do their own thing. They let them not worship all the gods, like they could do that. But then Paul comes in, and all of a sudden a bunch of people and Gentiles start joining the Jewish church. And then now there's like riots in the street, and the Jews are fighting the Christians, and the Romans don't even know the difference. And they're just like, what is going on here? And so rabble rousers, you get put down in Rome. That's how it works.
Yeah.
And so Paul was consistently rubbing them the wrong way. So,
Marin, had you ever heard of the Roman imperial cult before Barry started bringing it up?
No, not in those words.
Yeah,
I think
I'd never heard of it.
I had read a little bit about Nero and what he did. You know, there are certain names that come up as you study, but no, not under the heading of Roman imperial cult.
And this could be, and maybe it should be, some like full length podcast where I could just explain all this. But one of the things that's so fascinating is that like in Rome itself, the idea of a living person being a god was anathema. Like that's no bueno in Rome. Rome itself was not okay with humans being worshipped. But they would routinely, the Senate would actually deify somebody after they died. So after they died, then the Senate would say, yep, they are now divine and we can worship them.
Yeah.
So the big twist that came with Augustus is that people started worshiping him as a god, but not in Rome, not at the beginning, but in Asia, which is sort of the Greek East, so to speak, from the Roman perspective. They've long been worshiping kings as gods ever since Alexander the Great. This is like a very normal thing. And the Persians, so all of a sudden it comes far more naturally to people living in modern day Turkey, in ancient Turkey, Asia, for them to start worshiping this Roman emperor as a god. And so that's where it happened. It just so happens that that's also the place where so much of the early church was being born and so much of the New Testament was written. And so it's this weird confluence of different, like East meets West. East meets West. And
did that not change until Constantine? See the one that came and like turned it all around?
Constantine, yes and no. And if I ever get a PhD, it might be to answer that exact question someday, because
Worth it.
In the 3rd century and into the 4th century, the Roman imperial cult started kind of like fading. At least it fades from some of the archaeological records.
I've just been sitting around waiting for someone to answer that question.
I know,
so
me
I
too.
hope you get your PhD.
Well, maybe.
We need answers.
But Constantine was like, stop making sacrifices to me. But he didn't go so far as to say, but like, go ahead and tear down all these temples to me. It was more just like, hey guys, we're not pagans anymore. We're Christians. But like, I have a hard time imagining that everybody was like, oh, okay, we'll just stop doing the things we've been doing for 400 years. Like, I don't know, but that's what I don't know the answer to. So Stephen Friesen, the guy I mentioned, he was very gracious and gave me a chance to call him a year ago. And we did like a video call where I was just wide-eyed asking him all these questions. And now that I've read like a stack of books and all these articles, I want to reach out to him again and be like, okay, now I'm ready to have a much deeper conversation with these questions.
I'm coming over.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, all the way back to this passage.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me as I was reading this, because of all the research I've been doing, I've never had, when Paul uses this like athletic imagery all the time, running a race, he uses it in other places. I can't think of where they are. One of the Corinthians and I can't remember the other. Maybe it doesn't matter. But this is a common refrain for him. But what I now realize is that a big part of the Roman imperial cult, specifically in Asia or Asia Minor, is that a lot of these like festivals involved games, like athletic competitions that were designed to honor the emperor. And in fact, like the Emperor Domitian, so this is after Paul's time, but the Emperor Domitian actually created an entire like gymnasium complex in Ephesus and launched the Ephesian Olympics in his own honor, like which is mind-boggling. But they would do these big athletic competitions, and again, it was all to like bring honor to the emperor. And one of the religion and politics are not like two separate things in the ancient mind, and so there were a lot of these high-ranking officials who, let's say, if you wanted to become like a senator or president or whatever, but you lived in one of the provinces of Rome, you would go the route of becoming like high priest of Asia. And the high priest of Asia would be in charge of the Roman imperial cult, among other things. There was an entire title called the Aganothete or Aganothete. It was the person who was in charge of the festivals and the athletic competitions. There was a gymnasiarch, the person who was in charge of the gymnasiums in the city. And all of this was wrapped up in this worship of the emperor and all that to say, I don't have concrete evidence that Philippi did the same thing with the athletic competitions, but because of how Romanized Philippi was, because we know the imperial cult was alive and well in Philippi,
it would have been familiar.
It makes a lot of sense to think of it in more of these athletic competitions in more of that sort of Romanesque style than just the traditional Olympic style, Greek style that we are used to thinking about it. So could be wrong. I could be wrong. But to me, it sheds new light, and it actually ties it in with that citizens of heaven concept far better than him just kind of coming out with some new metaphor that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, because Paul's basically saying, not only are we not counting ourselves citizens of Rome, but we're running a race for Christ, not Caesar.
Right.
So, Philippi was a Roman colony. So people would have been like, we're Roman citizens. And Paul's saying, you're citizens of heaven, not Rome. And we're running for Christ.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he says, we want a heavenly prize. So what exactly is the heavenly prize?
I could stop talking. Do you want to answer that, Maren?
I'm dying to know what you think.
Because I was looking this up.
Yeah.
What it says in verse 14 of chapter 3, he says, heavenly prize. But in other translations, he calls it something else. In NIV, he says, the prize for which God has called me heavenward. In the English Standard Version, he says, the prize of the upward call of God.
Upward, yes.
So what is the gift? Because if you keep reading that scripture, it doesn't seem like, eventually he says Christ is coming. Like it talks about Christ's return. And when he does return, here's how everything's going to be transformed, including our bodies. And so I was like, then what is the heavenly prize? What are we talking about here?
Well, I think what he's referring to here is this idea that Paul has of, he talks often about attaining Christ, or becoming one with Christ, or knowing Christ, all these ideas of essentially like becoming so much like Christ that he's indistinguishable from him, and being able to like be resurrected to be like face to face with him, and to be with his Savior forever, to live as Christ, to die as gain. Like all of that flows into this idea of essentially the prize is reaching the finish line and running well. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Like that's what he wants to hear. And so I think of it less in terms of like getting something for like getting some sort of like, I don't know, gift at the end of your race. It's more about like winning and getting to stand on the victor's podium. The prize is not tangible. It's situational. I don't know.
But you can't get that until you die.
I guess, yeah, that's how he understands it. Not fully.
To die is gain.
To die is gain. To die is gain. That's where you get that upward prize. But upward, I think it's interesting to pay attention to because he's talking about the realm of God. That's where we're citizens of heaven. That's where God lives. But Paul is very clear in his eschatology that the ultimate aim, the ultimate end of everything is for heaven to become one with earth, to come down and become one with earth, new creation. So, again, I don't think this is Paul saying that my prize is to go off and get whisked away to some disembodied heaven. His prize is to get to be with Christ forever in eternity in a resurrected body in new creation.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because heavenly prize sounds like we're all going to go somewhere. We're going to go to heaven.
Sure. That's how we would
But
normally,
then 4 verses later, he's like, but Christ is coming down, and he will bring everything under his control. What does it say? It says In verse 20, it says, our citizenship is in heaven where the Lord Jesus lives, and we are eagerly awaiting for him to return as our Savior. He will take our weak mortal bodies and change them into glorious bodies like his own, using the same power in which he will bring everything under his control.
Right.
So when I was reading this, I was like, it doesn't sound like he's speaking of us going up to heaven, but King Jesus coming from heaven so that he can transform the world, including our own bodies. And so when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, so the heavenly prize is like full unity with Christ.
Yeah.
Sanctification is something you talked about a couple weeks ago, and then resurrection later.
Yeah, right. Resurrection is the ultimate fulfillment of this race that he's running. And just to be clear, the word prize there is the Greek word brabaion, which is a specific type of prize. It's the prize that you get if you're the victor of a public game. So it's the crown, the wreath, the garland, or whatever is put on you as a victory that you earn through the race. So
when the Philippians read this, were they on the same page as Paul, or were they already convinced? Like, were they already convinced of what he had to say? Or was this like a sales pitch to them being like, I'm trying to convince you that this is real? Like, were they in the soup of the imperial cult and they needed somebody to be like, you're not part of it. Like, we are part of something else. Or were they like, yeah, we already know that, so thanks for the encouragement?
I think two things. One, I think they were in a culture, in a time when they were constantly tempted to give way, to bend the knee. Like, if your options are like bow or die, like, it is very human nature to think maybe I should just bow. Right. And so Paul really wants them to stay true to what really matters. And he wants them to understand their place. But I also think that a part of what he's saying here, they're starting to experience hardship because of their rejection, not just of the imperial cult, but of all the things that they used to find so important, the worship of the other gods, the rituals, that even the communities they used to be a part of, they're experiencing hardship now because of this. And he wants them to understand, like, this isn't the time to like flag in your enthusiasm for Christ. This is the time to push forward, to press on, dioko. Like, this is your time to give it even more effort. And he wants them to press forward and not draw back.
Yeah.
And so I think it's both that sense of like, yeah, stay focused, don't get distracted, and don't go backward to where you used to be, but also like push forward, because in the suffering, you're actually experiencing what Christ experienced and you're getting closer to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So in verse 14, he says, I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God through Jesus is calling us.
Right. And meaning telos, or the Greek word telos, which Marin's spoken of multiple times before.
Yeah.
The goal.
So Lauren
completion.
Lauren right now is training for a mini marathon.
Yeah.
She's invited a handful of people to join her who normally don't run. And some of those people are kind of, they're at the point of training, I guess, where they're wavering on whether they want to do it.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of convinced, or feels like some people are going to drop out. And this verse, to me, when you were speaking about that, it reminded me of what I've heard Marin preach about before, where it's like, we can all sit in church and be motivated to run the race, but we need to get in shape. Like, we need to, in order to run a race, you got to be in shape.
Right.
You got to train. You got to practice. You can't press on, and you can press on and run the race, but you're going to run. You're not going to finish well or whatever.
Right.
So, Marin, you've preached on this before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you were just.
I'm actually looking up a verse from one of the last times I preached, because so much of what we're talking about right now has to do with this idea of pressing on.
Yeah.
It's so closely tied to this idea of endurance. I feel like this is something we just talked about recently.
So it occurred to me that Paul is speaking very like, this is not a passive life. Like, hey, everybody, this isn't something we're all waiting on to happen. Like, we're talking about Jesus and Christ's return, but like, there's some activity that needs to happen right now. We need to press on. We're actively engaged. And so I was thinking like, all right, so in order to run a race, in order to do these things for the glory of Jesus, like, how do we train for this?
Right.
And I know Marin's preached about it before. And so what are some what are some quick ways we can encourage people to be like, if we're going to run the race, here's how we got to train?
Yeah.
quite simply, I think it's Hebrews 12. That's what I'm looking up right now. You got my wheels spinning when you were talking about the heavenly prize and what that means and what that means for us. Hebrews 12:2. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. So there's that word perfect again. He completes our faith. He starts it and he finishes it. I love that this particular verse calls him a champion, which again brings to mind that imagery of running a race and winning a crown. Jesus is the champion who initiates and completes or perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, there's that heavenly prize. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, despising or disregarding its shame. And now he's seated in the place of honor beside God's throne.
Yeah.
That upward call, he is seated in a place of honor beside God's throne. So constantly the writers of the New Testament are telling us to lift our eyes.
Right.
They're reminding us that we are not citizens of this world, that there's more to life than the life we're living, and that someday at the end of it all, when we receive our prize, when our race has been run and we are champions with Christ, we will be seated on high, seated with the Father, united with him in oneness. My own personal thoughts, I am not bothered by the idea of a disembodied heaven. I'm sorry. The idea doesn't bother me. I don't care if it looks like, if new creation looks like Earth, maybe it will. That will be great. Or if it looks like actual streets of actual gold, maybe it will. That will be great. The point is what you just said, Barry. It's unification with God. It's being one with him. Yeah. It's being in his presence. That's what matters. Right. That is what matters. And that is what we're promised. And that is what we're supposed to keep our eyes on as we run our race. Yeah. I say this because I lost my grandma last week. And it really didn't hit me until you were preaching about running the race and completing it. And really, you touched on being surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Yeah. And I'm like, man, is that her now? Yeah. Is that, and it's not the grandma that I preached about during the endurance series, 99-year-old grandma.
She's still
going strong. Of
course she is.
This is my dad's mom. I lost her. But when I think about the way she ran her race, and even though she had dementia, the way she finished her race, and that she has been called home, and all week it's all I could think about is what she's experiencing right now, and the joy, her joy and her crown, was seeing her kids and her grandkids and even her great grandkids following after Jesus. That's my grandma wasn't a pastor, but her joy and her crown is seeing the life of Jesus brought into her family and lived out by her individual family members. Like that's everything. Yeah. So
Tyler, I love that you brought up that analogy of the mini marathon, because training for the mini, for example, or for a full marathon or whatever, the reason that you're doing it is to finish the mini marathon. Yeah. Right. That's why you're training. And it is so different to say I'm training for the mini marathon than it is to say I'm a runner or I like to run, because one of those has a concrete goal in mind. Yeah. Like I'm training, I'm going through hardship right now because I know what the end is, and it's to finish that race. That's what I'm aiming for. That's why I'm putting myself through this. That's why I'm getting up and running when I don't want to do it at all. If it's just a vague sense of like, I'm a runner, I like to run. Well, you might get up and run a few miles if you're feeling like it, but you're not going to get up when you're, sick or tired or whatever and run 7 miles because that's what your training regimen has you to do. It's a totally different mindset to have that end in mind versus to just kind of be. And so the analogy, transferring it over, it's like very different thing to say, I'm committing every breath of my body to, or every breath of my life to becoming like Christ. Yeah. Now and in the new creation. It's very different from saying that's my end, that's my goal, than it is to say like, I'm a Christian. Yeah.
Also a very different thing to say I'm going to run a mini marathon, and it's another thing to say I'm going to win the mini marathon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how we're told to run. Yeah. Don't you realize, this is 1 Corinthians 9, that in a race everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize. So run to win. Yeah. Like we're not even if I think about my own life, I should be running, I should be training, I should be working as hard as it would take to win the race, not just run the race.
Right.
I'm not content to merely run the race. I want to run it with excellence in such a way that I attain the prize at the end. You train harder when you're trying to win the Boston Marathon than when you're just trying to complete the Boston Marathon.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. My only pushback to that is it gives people too easy of an out to say, well, I'm no Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
I'm never going to win this race, so I might as well not try. I would say, in a weird way, we each have a custom way to win the race and not just complete it. It's different for each of us. We're not comparing each other.
Yeah.
Compared to each other. It's compared to yourself.
Well, let me finish it. It says, so run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize.
Right.
So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete training to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself may be disqualified. I love that line. I run with purpose in every step.
Yeah.
Purpose in every step. That's like, to me, that looks like praying without ceasing. Like, what does that mean? Is it even possible? Like, is there purpose when I wake up in the morning and, choose which socks to wear? Purpose in every step, Paul, like really every step. Pray without ceasing, like we're just always praying always, I do believe that it's possible. It's possible to live a way of life where the Holy Spirit just saturates every moment with or without you knowing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that when it comes to like praying without ceasing, for example, that sounds like an easy thing to just write off because it's so extreme. But you're right. When it becomes, when prayer is more about communing with the presence of God, and that's the thing that you're training to become more and more a part of your life, the awareness of God's presence, the gratitude, and the requests, like all the things, when that becomes more and more a part of you, praying without ceasing becomes something that isn't quite as extreme to imagine. It's just, you have to rethink kind of how that works. So prayer is one. I think, to answer your original question about how do we do this, how do we train?
Yeah.
I think we're reading a book right now as a staff. I think we've probably mentioned it on the podcast, but it's called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. I highly recommend it. I'm about 2 sections in. I haven't read more than that, but it's great. I love it. And one of the things he talks about is the idea of actually like apprenticing under Jesus. And so it's easy to say like, read the Bible and do your morning devotions as like a way to check the box. But what I think is probably more important is to dedicate yourself to trying to actually understand and put into practice the teachings of Jesus, which may or may not look like you sitting quietly alone in the morning with your Bible open on your lap. It might look like a conversation with a friend over coffee about how to navigate a challenging situation. It might look like listening to this podcast every week. It might look like being intentional to go to church so that you are actually like listening and learning from Jesus on such a regular basis that it starts to shape your life. And it probably does involve some quiet study alone with the Bible. We are the most privileged generation of the entire world that we get to have not only like almost universal literacy and access to multiple translations of the Bible.
Has to include that.
It's insane.
It has to include that.
Yeah.
It has to include practicing surrender every day. It has to include prayer. It has to include reading or knowing or doing both, knowing your Bible, knowing what it says about God, knowing what it says about you. Those are the things that training, that's like the lowest bar, I think.
Yeah.
But,
That's like saying, can you be a runner without using your lungs? Can you be an apprentice to Jesus, a disciple of Christ without knowing his word?
Yeah.
Right. And I like to keep to stretch the metaphor further, like it's easy to think of the Bible as this like, oh yeah, it's an obligation. It's this thing. I gotta read it to like whatever. It's so easy to think in terms of checking boxes, but I think of the Bible as this incredible gift our spiritual ancestors gave us. It's like they said, hey, we've been running this race for a while and we are going to give you these incredible shoes. And guess what? Here's the heart rate monitor that we think is best. And here's the diet plan that we know works because it's worked for hundreds and hundreds of people. It'll work for you. Like, that's what the Bible is. It's like, this is the tools that we need to run the race. It won't run the race for us. We still have to run the race, but it's like, we don't have to learn the hard way on a lot of these things. We have got our spiritual ancestors testifying to what this race looks like. And yeah.
I see the Bible as fuel for the race.
Fuel. Yeah.
You got to eat, right? That's just how I see the word. Like, it's nourishment for my mind and my body and my soul. You got to eat.
Yeah.
But I eat and ask questions because I don't always understand what it is I'm eating.
What
is
black
this?
salsa?
Black salsa.
That's right.
Exactly.
And a kind person would tell you, but I will.
All right. So in verse 13, this last thing we'll get to. In verse 13, Paul says that he forgets what is behind and he strains for what is ahead. And that made me wonder, all right, what does that say about how we ought to view our past mistakes, our past failures, but also our past successes?
Interesting. Also, just a quick little side note on that. It's possible, the NLT says forgetting the past. So they take an interpretive choice that means the past. It could also be that Paul is referring to other runners in the race. Like, there are other people.
That guy 2 miles away.
Yeah, right. There's other people right behind me, but I'm not paying attention to them. I'm running for the goal.
Was that when he was talking about enemies of the cross or something?
Maybe. Yeah. So it could be either way. So, but all that to say, it definitely could mean forgetting the past, because he was talking about his own past. So
past slowpoke back there.
Yeah, right. Or it could mean the things that are competing for my to win the race instead of me. So, but what was your question? I'm sorry.
Well, it made me wonder, all right, so if I'm supposed to forget what's behind and keep my eyes forward, what does that have to say about my past mistakes, my past failures, but also the things that I would consider like past successes? If he's forgetting one behind and straining for what's ahead, how should we look at those things that we've either accomplished or we've failed at?
Yeah. To me, it says not to rest on my laurels, and also not to be tethered to past mistakes. But I'm kind of going back to the Corinthians passage I just read about walking with purpose in every step. Every step forward is purposeful and intentional, and even the things that were good, even the things that God and I achieved together, because there's some good stuff back there. It's not all bad, but even those good things, I'm not content to just rest on those things or to live in the past. Oh God, remember when you and I were so close. Remember when this cool thing happened and you were using me in this way and I felt really alive in your kingdom. There is still purpose in every step until I am, called heavenly, called upward, I think that's what that means to me. Just not resting on my laurels and also not being anchored to sins of the past.
Yeah. And I also don't think that it means that the past doesn't matter, because I think it does matter. It shapes us. Like it is who we are, the brokenness, the successes, the journey that we've been on. Like he even says, like, don't forget what we've already accomplished. Like that's important as a part of this. So he's not saying doesn't matter what happened in the past. It does. But if we let those things become the thing we put our attention on, if that becomes where our focus is, then we can't win the race. And so he's saying, let those things will shape you, but they should shape you so that you can run the race better and win and keep your eyes on the prize.
That's good. I've got like 6 more questions.
I know. I really wanted to talk about the guy, the Usain Bolt of the ancient world that I put in my fun facts, but you're just gonna have to go back and look it up. It's pretty cool.
Like maybe one day we can talk about why Paul said basically model your life after mine instead of model your life after Jesus. Like what if one of us, like what if somebody around, I guess we're gonna talk about it, but what if somebody in 2025 was like, hey, just whatever you do, pattern your life after mine.
We'd be like, cult?
Yeah. I mean, honestly.
I don't know. I don't know. I've always taken that statement from Paul. I have read it as, wow, how cool that you could say that. I don't think I could say that. I'd like to be able to say that. It's kind of like what we talked about in our staff meeting last week, like with this Practicing the Way book. Who are you becoming? I want to be the kind of person who, when I've reached a certain age or a certain level of maturity, that I could say, hey, model your life after mine.
Right.
That'd be amazing if I could say that.
But he doesn't say that I've arrived. He actually says the opposite. He's like, I haven't arrived.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm going for perfection and I'm not there, but pattern your life after mine.
It's just, to me, it's just what we used to say with Way of Discipleship at Grace. It's follow me as I follow Jesus. The idea is I've been walking this road longer than you. And so I'm learning as I go. I want you to learn with me as I go.
Yeah.
As I pattern my life after Christ.
Exactly.
I guess I just don't like that anymore.
Yeah.
I used to like that, and I don't think I like it anymore.
Well,
I want to just say, hey, let's follow Christ together.
Well, maybe Paul will apologize when you see him on the other side.
You owe me an explanation.
But this is a whole other conversation we don't have time for. It has to do with the responsibility of like Christian leadership.
Yeah.
And like if I am a pastor, for example, then like I need to be able to say that my life is worthy of being imitated because I've committed myself so deeply to Christ. And if I can't say that, I shouldn't be a pastor. And it doesn't mean I've got it all figured out. It means I'm working very hard to be farther down the road than the ones that I'm shepherding, because the shepherd has to know where they're going.
Or it means even in my failures, watch how I respond to my failures.
Yeah.
Watch how I
take responsibility.
Exactly.
I apologize. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, it's a whole other conversation. You want to do a 2-hour pod?
One day we'll do a 2-hour pod. Today is not that day because it's my birthday.
It is.
That's
you gotta
right.
go
I got
celebrate.
places to
You've
go.
got arcades to go to and naps to take.
Yeah. All right, where do we go next?
All right, we're wrapping it up. One more week.
Whoa.
One more week. We're finishing Reimagine. And it's Celebration Sunday, so I'm expecting it to be an absolute blast. We are going to, we're just going to have a great time celebrating what God's done through Reimagine. We've got one more passage to look at, and it is the passage where I'm pretty sure the soundbite came, "You better rejoice," when I first
Is it
preached on that.
rejoice in the Lord always?
Yeah, and again I say rejoice.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's the passage,
Playing
and
the hits.
there's some cool stuff in there that I think will kind of help us land the plane on this whole series. And
then you're not here.
And I'm taking off. I'm going to
so you're not
disappear
gonna
for a
be here
couple
next
weeks.
week. So it's going to be me and Marin wrapping up.
man.
You should have
Celebration
Amy
Sunday.
join or something. She would love that.
She doesn't deserve it. We'll see. We'll see what we can do. All right. Well, Barry, you're going to take 2 weeks off.
I am.
And then we'll see you, I guess, when Milton's here, maybe in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Excellent.
Cool. All right, Marin, will you please send us out?
I sure will. Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God.
And we'll see you on the other side of Sunday.